question, Anna Victoria, and I want to start by saying this is what I was talking about at the beginning. This is how I frame the whole problem. The system is corrupt. It works great for those at the top. It works great for anybody who can hire an army of lobbyists and lawyers and bought and paid for experts and think tanks and PR firms. It's just not working for the rest of us. So every issue that we talk about, racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, every issue we talk about goes right through decision-making in Washington that is influenced by those with money and power. And this is why I believe where we start this conversation in the other direction is to fight back against the corruption. Private prisons have no place in American criminal justice. About detention centers for immigrants, or it's true whether we're talking about incarceration for people as part of the criminal justice system. No. But here's the point. Once it starts, it's exactly the way you described it. There's now somebody out there to lobby for it. Wants those contracts. Do you know that there are places now in the United States where the state or municipality makes a contract with a private prison and guarantees the number of people who will be put into prison? That's not equal justice under law. That's just grinding human beings through a system in order to produce profits for those at the top. So, that's why everything I call for starts with big systemic change. How do we reduce the influence of money and power in Washington? We start with an anti-corruption bill. There's part one. Part two, we push on giant corporations that right now just roll through this economy. Think about it. They roll through towns, they roll through their employees, they roll over their customers. We need to get more power back in the system, and that means more power back in the hands of employees. That means making it easier to join a union, and that unions have power in negotiations. It also means we have got to put a bigger investment in protecting our democracy. I mentioned earlier a constitutional amendment to protect the right to vote for every American citizen and to guarantee that that vote gets counted. That's a good place to start. But how about if we repeal all of the voter suppression laws? Overturn Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. More power in the hands of our people, we can fight back against the power that's concentrated among the wealthy and the well-connected. So for me, every part of this is about making the big systemic changes so that we have an opportunity to have a government that reflects our values. You know, I went down to the border and saw the people locked in cages. I saw cages of little girls. That is not a system that makes our country any safer, and it is certainly not a system that reflects our values. I'm already completely on board. I want to protect our dreamers. I want to make sure that we have a pathway to citizenship. I want to protect people who are here under temporary protected status. I want to reform our visas. I mean, it's every part of this. But what it is more than anything else is I want a government that no longer reflects the interest just of the rich and the powerful. I want a government that lines up with the values of the rest of America. That's all right.
You can get excited about that. Yes. So, I do too. I think everyone here really does. So now we're going to hear from Chuck Tyler. Chuck is a decorated U.S. Army combat veteran and a veteran campaign professional from Charlottesville, Virginia, and a proud member of Move On. Honorable discharge in 2003, Chuck has worked on issue and candidate campaigns across the country, from President Obama's campaign in 2008 and 2012 to healthcare voter and vets against hate. And today he lives in Florida because he has this terrible habit of going to places where the fight is happening. And it is happening in Florida. And we are so happy that Chuck is here with us today. So Chuck, take it away.
Hi, thanks so much for being here, Senator. So, I have a lot of buddies who have deployed overseas to protect the democratic processes in other countries. However, you know, here at home, we've got corporations like Hobby Lobby, who incidentally have just completely undermined the ability for millions of women to have access to safe and affordable contraception. So, corporations like that are fueling a really extreme right-wing agenda that's devastating to Black and brown communities and low-income communities. Now, I appreciate the fact that you have rejected corporate PAC money. However, we also know that it's been individual donations from Wall Street and Silicon Valley that have fueled some of your campaigns. Small donor, publicly financed systems work to bring us back to the democratic process of one person, one vote, something that we as Americans believe in and have fought for. My question for you, Senator, is if you're elected president, can we count on you to create a small donor public financing system on a federal level for every federal election? And if so, why? Thank you.
So, let me start by saying thank you. I'm grateful for your service, as is everyone. I have 3 brothers who are veterans, and the notion that we have people who have served, who come back and serve again by supporting our democracy and fighting for our democracy, I think is one of the best things we got going in America. So thank you. I'm glad you asked about money in politics. Look, every part of this for me is about how money influences what's going on in Washington. And we talk about campaign finance reform, and we should. Campaign finance reform is important, but understand, money seeps through this town a lot more than just in campaigns. It's here all the way. It's here with the lobbyists. It's here with the lawyers. There's not a decision that gets made in this town over on Capitol Hill that there's not somebody in the room watching out for the wealthy and the well-connected. And so my view on this is we got to fight back against this on all fronts. But a good place to start right now in a Democratic primary is to start by asking candidates where their money comes from. And I think that's the right thing to do. So let me just start by being completely transparent about this, Chuck. Look, when I started a presidential campaign, I looked around at this and I said, there are kind of 2 ideas for how you could run a campaign. You can either try to do it entirely with small donors and volunteers and build a grassroots movement, or you can spend a lot of time with a lot of wealthy folks behind closed doors and then hope you'll have enough money when you get to the end to buy a bunch of TV ads and run your campaign. I believe that we have a real opportunity right now in the Democratic primary to build from the grassroots up. So here's what I've done. I take not only no corporate PAC money, I don't take PAC money of any kind. I just don't take it. I don't take any Washington lobbyist money of any kind. And I'm not out sucking up to a bunch of billionaires hoping that they're going to run a super PAC for me. I made the decision that I'm not going to do a bunch of high-dollar fundraisers with millionaires and corporate executives. In other words, I'm going to try to run this thing with what we can do on small donations and volunteers. And by the way, let me just say to all of you, if you think that's a good way to run a campaign, then go to ElizabethWarren.com. I'm serious. You gotta sign it. I believe in this. We gotta make it happen. Go to ElizabethWarren.com, put in $5, volunteer an hour, whether or not you've even decided who you want to support ultimately. We have to show that building a campaign from the grassroots up can work in America in 2020. That's our job. And here's the big difference. When we roll in to the election in 2020, when we're in the general election, if we spend this next year truly building a grassroots movement, that's going to be our comparative advantage in that 2020 election. Everybody's going to have plenty of money at that point to push back and forth in TV ads and so on. But if we have really built a grassroots movement, think what that will mean. It will mean we got a better shot at the White House. It will mean we've got a better shot up and down the ballot to take back Congress, to take back some of our state houses, to take back some of those governor's races. Because when you build from the grassroots, it helps everybody who's in the fight, not just the one at the top. And one more thing, we build that grassroots movement, that's what gives us the energy to carry over, to start in January 2021 to make the changes we must make so that someone like Donald Trump is never elected president of the United States.
What Chuck brings up is so important here. You mentioned, and your personal commitment is admirable. This is the way campaigns should be run, and I'm so happy to see you doing that. At the same time, you mentioned money is flowing all through this town and disrupting the people's will and the democracy. So if you were to be elected president, can you tell us in your first 100, if you were to be elected president, tell us, in your first 100 days, what sort of system levels changes would you be pursuing to take money out of politics? Are there specific policies you'd be fighting to advance?
Absolutely. In fact, I can tell you where to go look for them. I have introduced the biggest anti-corruption bill since Watergate. And it's a big bill because it is a big problem out there. I was giving some of the pieces on it. It's to break up lobbying as we know it. You know, again, I want to go back to this point. Everything you think about that you want to see happening in government, you want a government that's going to be responsive on climate change fast, now, see it as urgent. Not so long as the oil industry is calling the shots in this time, right? You want to see better gun safety, not so long as the NRA is calling the shots. Oh, we may be able to get a piece here or a sliver over there, but if we want big systemic change, it's going to mean attacking the corruption head on. And that means campaign contributions. I'm with you, Chuck, on small dollar, finding ways to do it, federal financing, lots of ways we can look at this. But it can't stop there. It's got to be attacking the lobbying. It's got to be attacking the fact that there are no basic enforcement of ethics rules anywhere in this city. How about we start out with the United States Supreme Court has to follow some basic rules of ethics. So, you don't even have to say first 100 back on their heels. And then we got a chance to pass a wealth tax. Then we've got a chance to pass universal child care. Then we've got a chance to pass a real housing bill to build 3.2 million new housing units across this country. We have a chance for Medicare for all. We have a chance to make the changes that people want us to make, that will make a difference in their lives, even if the drug industry doesn't like it or the NRA doesn't like it. This is our chance, but it's going to take restructuring. We've got to do it on corruption. We've got to do it by fighting back on corporate power, and we have got to do it on protecting our democracy so there's some real accountability in this country.
Just because we're running a bit late, sorry. So just imagine yourself speaking for 4 minutes about. So the next question comes from Belinda Freeman, who hails from California and is a student at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta. And she is the founder and president of the university's chapter of Planned Parenthood Generation. And, you know, speaking of the Supreme Court, she has led campus-wide conversations on sexual assault on campus, and the gender, race, wage gap, and civic engagement. Belinda is also first-generation Ghanaian American and a reporter for her campus television station. So now, Belinda, take it away.
Hello, Senator Warren. Thank you for coming and answering my question. The right to vote is among the most fundamental in our democracy. This right hasn't been fully realized by most Americans, especially people of color. It is harder to vote today than a decade ago in 25 states after the Voting Rights Act was gutted and millions of Americans' voices were silenced. For example, in Georgia, where I go to the illustrious Clark Atlanta University, HBCU folks know what I'm talking about, and I do vote in Georgia, me and my peers were able to rally our classmates and friends behind our Spelman sister, Stacey Abrams. We were excited, we were energized, and then election day came, and it was absolutely heartbreaking to get numerous direct messages, text messages, calls from my friends that were held up at the polls. Some were saying they were getting offered provisional ballots instead, or they were turned away because their name didn't exactly match the voter registration because they didn't put their middle name. All of that work kind of just was washed away, and a lot of them were just really defeated. See, we want to be civically engaged, but there are so many concerted efforts to discourage us. More than 100,000 people were purged from the voter rolls, and another 53,000 registrations, mostly black people, were held before the 2018 election. Voter purges and exact match requirements disproportionately disenfranchise communities of color, Asian Americans, Latinx Americans, Black Americans, Native Americans, and countless other communities. We're living and existing in the new Jim Crow. These and other voter suppression tactics would have been stopped by the pre-clearance in the VRA. Now, we understand that as president, you cannot single-handedly reverse this, but there's a lot that you can do. What are your specific plans to end this country's ongoing assault on people of color's access to polls? And how will you ensure that everyone has full access to the ballot box?
Thank you. It's a powerfully important question. So I'm going to start by dreaming big. And that is, we need a constitutional amendment to protect the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted. That's where we should be aiming. I'm all for restoring the Civil Rights Act on this. I'm all for the Voting Rights Act to strengthen it. I realize that's easier than getting a constitutional amendment. But look, you don't get the big change if you don't get out there and fight for it. And for me, that's what we need to do. I want you just for 1 second to think about the difference. If we had a constitutional amendment that protected every citizen's right to vote and to get that vote counted, all of a sudden, every one of these, what kind of voter suppression craziness is someone trying to put through, starts to weaken. And you've got federal muscle behind making sure that every American citizen gets a right to vote. There's another reason to fight for it, is that most Americans think that's already the law. But it's a highlighting point. People are shocked to discover that that's not guaranteed in the Constitution, and that states that want to suppress the vote, because that's how the people in power stay in power, have a lot of leeway for them. We need to put a stop to it, and that's why I call for a constitutional amendment, because it talks about this is the bedrock of our democracy, the right of every citizen to vote. So give me the chance, and as President of the United States, I'll get out and stump for this. I promise. I will get out and fight for it. I will make it a national issue. It also means, as part of it, we'll ask Congress to restore the Voting Rights Act. We'll get in on that one. Ask Congress to roll back these voter suppression laws all across the country. Use federal law to override the state law when they're taking away the rights of American citizens. But because here's the thing, right now, we're just treating it like voting is something, like democracy is something. There's just a machine that's going to go of itself. And boy, if we haven't learned anything else in the last 2.5 years, we should have learned that this is an emergency. We need all hands on deck, fighting to make sure that every citizen gets a chance to vote and to get that vote counted. And I want to say one more quick thing. People say to me when I talk about this, that's just too hard. It's too hard, girl. You know, you ask for too much, ask for something smaller, ask for little stuff out at the end, smile more. And here's what I said. You know, what do you think they said to the abolitionists? Just too hard. Give up now. To the suffragettes, too hard. Give up now. Right? To the early union organizers, too hard. Give up now. To the foot soldiers in the civil rights movement, too hard, give up now. To the gay rights activists who wanted equal marriage, too hard, give up now. But they didn't give up. They organized, they fought for working people, they